Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sanderlanche podcast. Today is the start of something a little bit different. We are not continuing immediately in Elantris.
Data, what do you mean? We're not continuing in Elantris.
So what happened is that Jamie and Dak had a little, was it a little Mistborn? Was that the joke? It's
Sure.
Jamie and Dak had a baby. And so we're going to take a few weeks off of our normal recordings. About a month is what we plan, to give them time to get used to life with new baby and see kind of where and how and maybe even if the show fits into their new, babies change a lot of stuff. So get time to sort all that out. In the meantime, we didn't want to leave you guys with absolutely nothing for 4 weeks or whatever. So we came up with an idea that Joe and I could do on our own, which is we're going to look over, for this first episode of our baby break, I think that's what I'm going to call these when I post them, we're going to look over 1-star reviews of The Final Empire, the first book we read, and kind of discuss the merits of some of these perspectives. And since I'm probably the least critical of these books, because I really love the Mistborn series, and Joe probably in contention for most critical of the books, so it seemed like a good sort of pairing to discuss some views on bad parts of these books and see what we thought.
By most contentious, you mean in our group, maybe not ever.
Well, no, obviously not ever. I mean, of the 4 people who are on the show, yeah. It's like, of those 4, you probably have a good claim to finding more flaws.
Yep, I'm a judgmental guy, I guess.
Anyway, so I am Data, and with me is...
It's me, it's Joe.
That's all for the next couple weeks. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry. If you guys came for Australian accents, I don't know what to tell you. They're not here.
If people aren't as interested in the 1-star review thing, then maybe we'll recruit a couple of random people like I did for the Christmas special and do something kind of completely different. But we'll see what the reactions are. So anyway, hold on to something, everyone. The modified Sanderlanche is about to begin.
From Omega to Mars, from the council to the seediest bars, from the reaches of space to the pillars of a sorry grace. There are battle wombitarians lacking in humility. Turians are bragging about their reach and flexibility. The clutter of the city spreads to the lowliest stars. But no matter what scars you bear, whatever uniform you wear, you can fight like a Krogan, run like a leopard, but you'll never be better than Commander Shepard.
Okay, so I guess before we do that, so you gave a rating to the whole trilogy. So what would you, just the first book, since we're talking about with these reviews, like where would you rate that on like a 10-star thing? And I'll give mine. And we'll see what we're starting.
I would say that the first book is probably my favorite of the 3, so I would give it like a 7.8.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. Yeah, for me, The Final Empire is one of my all-time favorites. So we're talking like if something's a 10, this is it or pretty close to it for me. So we're not that terribly far off.
Right. Yeah. I'm pretty generous to The Final Empire, especially because it introduces us to this. So there's a lot of wonder and kind of like, oh, what's going on in that book, which I feel like is what makes fiction, interesting when you kind of don't know everything that's happening and you're introduced into like a bold new world. Like I'll go back and read the first Harry Potter book a bunch just because it's like it's cool to experience like his first introduction into the world of magic and wizards and stuff. So that's probably why I rate that one so high, just because I enjoy the introduction to stuff like that. And Vin, I feel like, is a uniquely different perspective into that kind of world because she has lived a very different kind of life than she's not like a normal protagonist that's like just going along about their life and then all of a sudden crazy things happen. It's like she lived a very different kind of life beforehand as well. So it's pretty cool.
You could kind of argue the same about Harry Potter, I guess, because he's lived like an abused life basically.
Right. Yeah. That's true. He had a little less time with that than Vin, though, because he was he was only 10 when stuff started happening for him.
It's true. It's I agree that I reread the first Harry Potter book, and it's not the strongest one. like story wise or even like writing wise, but it's interesting to go back and read it and just how much of the book occurs before he even gets to school. When in my brain, like they're all about his time at school, but yeah, it's like a large percentage of that book before he even gets there.
Because I don't remember how many total chapters there are in that book, but I think he doesn't get to the school until like chapter 5 or maybe 6. And that's actually a pretty big chunk of the first book. So maybe it's like a third of the book. But
and I'm curious. I'm going to go bring it up on my Kindle and find out, because now we're talking about it. I want to know.
Yeah, I think while we're digressing on Harry Potter, I think my favorite, besides the 7th book, which, wraps it up, I think my favorite book is the 6th one. I find that one to be the most interesting, but also not the most rereadable.
Yeah, I see that.
I like it a lot, but I don't reread it a ton. I think I really like all of them when he's in school, so that's why the 7th one was kind of harder for me, because he's not in school anymore, because they're trying to wrap things up.
I like 6 because of some of the stuff it introduces. I like Slughorn and like going to meet him and stuff, and I like the way that we're actually finally getting answers to lots of, it's just like throwing out answers to us left and right. But I especially like it after how depressing and annoying book 5 was.
Yes, very depressing and annoying is book 5. 2 and 5 are hard reads. I like 2, actually. The older I've gotten and the more I've reread it, I actually like it quite a bit. But there's a lot of the same kind of stuff in 2 where people think he's the heir and they're being mean to him, and he's depressed and sad and trying to figure out what's going on. But 5, it's like it totally goes above and beyond that. I guess they blame it on like Voldemort's connection with him, but yeah, it's weird. So yeah, this is the Harry Potter podcast now, so that's what we're going to talk about.
We started out with a big digression, immediately not going into what we said we were going to, but
that's fine.
For the record, chapter 7 is the Sorting Hat, which I think you would call like his official beginning at Hogwarts, and that is 37% of the way through the book.
Yeah, so that's a over a third before he actually like walks into the school.
Okay, so for our episode today, I've collected some 1-star reviews from Amazon and from Goodreads, just stuff that sounded fun. And I'm not gonna
look at reviews on Goodreads. Do you use Goodreads a lot?
I don't read a lot of reviews on Goodreads. I used Goodreads a lot a couple of years to track like what I was reading and how much I was reading, but I never like use it to figure out if I want to read a book. It's just like you can put your collection in there, and you can see when you last read something, so on and so forth. And I had a competition with someone at like a few years back to be like, which of us is going to read the most books this year?
Yeah, it wasn't Dak.
No, it was somebody else that we know. But anyway, so I'm not gonna not say people's names, since these are posted on public websites where they are connecting their names to these already. I'm not gonna skip over those if there were some. The Amazon ones mostly don't have them.
Right.
But anyway, so I'm gonna kind of pick from these randomly and just as we go through. Before we get into it, wait, I know why, but why 1-star reviews? Just I think they're fun sometimes because they're just so ridiculous, it's the people who really didn't like the book, and so they're going to say the most bad things about it. Yeah. Although I will say probably over half of the Amazon 1-star reviews were complaints that their book was damaged, there were pages missing from their book, that kind of stuff. So I didn't pick any of those, obviously. These are all ones that actually talk about the book. All right, I'm going to start with this one because it just strikes me as being ludicrous. So Petra Strasberg says on Amazon, I don't understand why he was chosen for the Wheel of Time series, ? I couldn't get through the first chapter of this book. A big disappointment. The story was trite and the magic was forced and gimmicky. And that's the entire review. Is there even any magic in the first chapter? I assume that she does not mean the prologue. I'll allow for that much that she's not talking about the prologue. So I mean, we know that he takes down the guy in the prologue, but we don't know how. Right. But okay, so yeah, magic in the prologue or the first chapter. Okay. I'm gonna look at the first chapter real quick and see if like what kind of magic we see. So Ash is falling from the sky. Vin is the first chapter is about Vin and about her. It's how her using her luck, right? Yeah, her luck, right. Well, you don't even know what that is yet. Yeah, no, I don't like, and that's why I picked this one to start with, because I don't see how you can rate a book and say the story was trite for one thing, and that the magic, if you read the first chapter, or it says I couldn't get through the first chapter, so you didn't even make it to the end of the first chapter. Yeah. I don't completely dismissing the prologue, like the mystery behind, because he's not even named at that point, is he? They don't call him Kelsier. I think we find they call him the Survivor. Let me go back to that because I'm right here. Let's see. Because I was about to say, like, disregarding. No, we have Kelsier's name in there for sure. So Kelsier's name, you hear it, and you know that he somehow destroys the Lord's Manor, but
then you go to another chapter with a completely different character, and you're like, oh, I can't even make it through this chapter. It's like, so the prologue, the mystery behind how he defeated that lord, that's like, that doesn't pique your interest at all. You're just like, this magic sucks. I'm out. Peace.
Luck. What a lame name. I'm so
Luck.
out.
Which is funny because it's like, again, they never call it luck again. So yeah, this 1-star review, I give that 1-star review a 0 stars because they didn't even give it. They didn't give it a try. I made a rule for myself because I used to be like that. I'd get into it the first chapter and be like, I don't know, I don't like this. So I've now made it a rule that I have to make it at least 4 chapters into a book before I say, yeah, you know what, I don't know if I want to keep reading this. I got to give it, at least 4 chapters before I put it down and say, nah, I'm good.
That's probably fair. There's what I think this person may be more upset, like, because the title of the review is, I don't understand why he was chosen to finish the Wheel of Time series. So maybe they read his Wheel of Time ones and didn't like those. I don't know. And maybe that's the source of, I hate him, so I'm going to review this book badly.
Yeah, they came in with a bias based on. So who originated the Wheel of Time?
Robert Jordan wrote the first many books. Yes, he passed, and he chose, before he died, him and his wife chose Brandon when he really hadn't published. He may have published 1 book at that point, and they were
That's interesting.
But he was also a big fan of that series, and I guess in that community, so they may have had some knowledge of him from that. I don't know. But there was, Robert Jordan said there was going to be 1 more book, and apparently when Brandon started, and the wife, because Robert Jordan's wife was also his editor. And so she was kind of taking the lead as the editor, but also as the representation of her deceased husband in deciding things for this book. As they started going through the notes, they're like, oh no, this is not 1 book worth of information that we're going to have to communicate. It ended up being 3 books that Brandon wrote for the series. But
so how many Wheel of Time books are there total?
So in the main story, there are 14. That's what I've read so far. And then there's 1 there's 1 prequel that was published sort of in the middle of after the 11th book or 10th book or something.
Right.
And
so that's why I guess I didn't realize that's why Wheel of Time's fair game for us to read outside of this, because it's somebody else's work that he took over. It has nothing to do with the Cosmere stuff. Yeah,
and and he only wrote 3 of them, and out of the 15 total, so I'm like, we're not reading 12 books just to get to the 3 that he wrote that are the subject of our podcast. So.
That's true.
And they're not short books either. So, but it's kind of funny you talk about the first 4 chapters. That sounds like perfectly reasonable, except as the Wheel of Time books go on, the prologue gets longer and longer until there's 1 book, I don't remember which one it was, the prologue is literally 17% of the book before the chapters start.
Well, but by that time I'm already invested, right?
If you're going to drop out of the series at that point,
right. And that's what I mean. That's like, if you're going to start a series, the first book, you got to give it 4 Game of Thrones, I gave it 4 or 5 chapters the first time I tried to read it, and I was like, oh man, I don't know about this, so I stopped reading it. But then I was really bored one summer. I was like, I guess I'll try it. The TV shows, everybody says it's amazing. And so I started reading it again. And I read the first, second, and third one, and I got halfway through A Feast of Crows. I think that's the 4th one. And then I stopped reading it. I was just like, So I've still not finished what has been out so far. Plus, the next book's not out yet, so it's not like I'm in a hurry.
Yeah, you're just going to get to the end and be waiting for more. So I only read... I read 2 books in that series because I wasn't going to read them until they were all out. That was my original thing. And then the show came out and everyone's talking about it. And I was like, well, I want to watch the show, but I want to read the books before I watch the show. So fine, I'll start reading the books. And I read the first 2. And at the end of the second one, what really bothered me most is Arya's plot in the second one. She has this thing where she spends the whole book trying to get back to her mother and brother. And through the book, she's inching closer and closer. And then at the end of the book, she's actually pretty close to where they are, but she doesn't make it in the book ends. And I was the most invested in that plot, in her getting back. And so it bothered me that the book ended there. And I was like, I don't know if I want to start the next book. I went out and looked up her story on Wikipedia and found out that instead of making it back to her family that she's so close to now, she ends up on another continent and doing completely different stuff in the next few books. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, if she had made it back to her mom, she probably would have been killed at the Red Wedding.
Well, yeah.
But.
And I mean, yeah, story wise, it makes sense what he wants to do with the character. It just felt to me so much like this promise of, yep, this is where she's going.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting closer. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. Nope, no payoff. You never get a payoff for this.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
It'd be as if the movie, The Incredible Journey or whatever, the dogs and the cat like are over the hill. They see their house, and then like a pound guy comes and picks them up and drives them away.
That's sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's why I didn't keep going in those books. And then I started watching the show because I was like, okay, I'm not going to read. I'll just watch the show. And I got like 2 episodes into the show and I was like, I already know everything that's happening. This is following the books pretty closely. I'm bored.
Mm-hmm.
And then I never watched the show.
Yeah, they end up deviating from the books, obviously, when there was no more book material. So
yeah, well.
But yeah, I watched the first 2 seasons of the show and I was like, I'm good. So I never did watch the show after that or finish it. I mean, I know what happens, of course. It's part of pop culture. So, but yeah, I never actually finished it.
Okay, let's do another one of these, but maybe one with a little more depth to it than that silly one.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Brandon hater. I mean.
Yeah, it was just so random. Okay. No, not that one yet. This was actually pretty long. We'll see what we think about this guy. So Kevin on Goodreads. Oh, and I was going to hold on before I even get into that. I was going to say, just for perspective here, on Amazon, this book has 7,500 ratings and 75 of them are 1 star. So like exactly 1% are 1 star.
1% of people.
Yeah. And the numbers are actually pretty close to that on Goodreads. 460,000 reviews on Goodreads. 4,500 of them are 1 star. So a little bit less than 1%. So
I wonder if that's like an algorithm where they push them out, because I feel like that's too perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, because it's just there's so many more on Goodreads that I was kind of like, well, although I did see at least one that was the exact same review posted both places. So I don't know how often that happens either. But anyway, I just wanted to give some perspective that we're reading these bad reviews of this book and talking about them. This is in no way majority opinions on this book. So
right.
And it'll be interesting if we continue doing this for the next episode to see the comparison. If this is 1%, how many percent is 1 star for like The Well of Ascension?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so Kevin on Goodreads said this is massively overhyped and lazily constructed. For starters, despite Mistborn being touted by some, the author, in parentheses, as a, quote, the bad guy wins book, it is actually as generic as almost any other book using a Dark Lord. The only difference in this book is he isn't trying to reclaim power, only maintain it. Now, don't get me wrong, the premise could be good fun, but the way it is conveyed is way too painful to truly enjoy. Now, before I rip into the book, I should say it wasn't so bad that I couldn't finish it, only that I had to skim during some of the tedious middle portions. Also, I was actually interested to learn about some of the mysteries, though that just made it more of a slap in the face when no effort is made to give them a satisfying resolution. The characters in the series are where many of the problems stem from. We have Vin and Kelsier as the main characters. Despite being the most fleshed out, Vin was never even slightly likable, with her plethora of inner monologues and brother issues. Kelsier fared better, but still felt pretty generic and had too many lines and moments evidently made to force the reader to like him. The rest of the characters are vague, scarcely fleshed out shadows with single attributes that define them. Unfortunately, this is even the case for the Lord Ruler. Even after seeing the twist coming, I was pretty curious to find out about him and sloshed through the slew of filler antagonists to get to the end, only to find him as a very generic Dark Lord entity. I've heard Brandon speak, and he's an intelligent guy. He gives advice on showing rather than telling, and I expected closer to George R.R. Martin's work based on that. Yet he has a habit of stating the obvious and never implying things. Sometimes it is needed because the characters' reactions are so unbelievable that you need to hear it from them to confirm what's going on. Other times it's obvious, but stated anyway. The pacing is terrible. Brandon clearly wanted to make a story about an epic uprising, but wasn't too clear on how to get to the actual uprising. We meet characters and get some description of the world, but the plethora of training sections, which you can see coming from a mile away, the whole noble parties could have been fun in a better book, but dialogue and characterization is just so weak that everything came across as copy-pastes of stereotypes. Once the actual uprising occurs, the pace goes from slow to wildly erratic with some random burst of heroism, false flag deaths, sacrifices, etc., but it's all cramped in such a close section and glued together so poorly that events are jagged and odd. The occurrences themselves are also very unbelievable, such as the event which sets off the uprising, which was very cliche and spelled out immediately in the next chapter. All in all, this book was just not there. Nothing felt truly inspired. Did I think it might have had potential? Sure. before there was any dialogue. Were some parts cool? Well, not really, but the fighting was interesting the first time. Would I recommend it? Absolutely not, unless you're a fan of new magic systems in a bland setting. Sorry, that was a long one. So what do you think?
Wow, that was wow. He really dove for it. So like we kind of did opposites, right? That first review was like, I couldn't even get through the first chapter. It was terrible. And then this guy's like, look, I read the whole thing and I thought about it all, and here's the thing. But I feel like I feel like where he's kind of failing is he's expecting Brandon to be somebody else. He even says that. He's expecting Brandon to be like George R. R. Martin. It's like, well, that's not his thing. And while I do admit there's some stereotypical type character archetypes in the first book, especially with the other crew members who don't get more fleshed out until later. At the same time, I would say the story is not even really about them. It's only about Kelsier and Vin, really. And then to an extent Sazed, but so much of Sazed is a mystery in the first book that you don't get to really dive in. So I can see where he's coming from on some things. I would say that he's a little too critical of the book for sure. I mean, I thought that the ending was pretty good, but I can see where he's coming from. It's like you have this Lord Ruler guy, and then he shows up, and he's just kind of like an evil guy. But again, you don't get more until later when you find out that he did all these other things. But has the book been touted as the bad guy wins? This first book?
Yeah, well, and we talked about it a little when we were reading, but Brandon has said it's a story about not the bad guy wins in the book. I guess a world where the bad guy won, because this is like the Lord Ruler's world, basically. Like he took the power and whatever. So it's like Alendi story is like the bad guy won, and we're coming in after that.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But even then, knowing what we know now, of course, we've got hindsight. This guy probably he may have never read the two books after.
That's true.
But even then, we know it's like Rashek wasn't really the bad guy. He was just a guy who was trying to figure out how to do the right thing because his uncle, gave him instructions.
Right.
And then it just didn't work out.
Well, he was still an asshole, so it was,
yes, he was still
part
a jerk
of it too.
Yeah.
So it's like he's the guy who has to save the world, but he's kind of an asshole. So it's like it doesn't end up being that nice a place.
Yeah, exactly. He's not smart enough to know he can't just push the Earth away from the sun or push the Earth towards the sun or whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, I could, again, only reading the first book, I can see where he's coming from on some of that stuff. But I think Vin and Kelsier are probably the most compelling parts of the story. And for him to say that the inner monologue and stuff of Vin was, I think he said boring. I'm not sure the exact word he used.
He said Vin was never likable, never ever slightly likable with her plethora of inner monologue and brother issues.
I feel like that's a little harsh.
Yeah.
I feel like she's likable. I feel like she's more likable than Kelsier at some points because you feel for her. You want her to get to start trusting people, to get better, to be better, and those kinds of things. Whereas there are moments in the first book where we were like, man, could Kelsier end up being the bad guy at the end of this? Because some of the stuff he's doing is pretty rough. So yeah, I feel like this guy's probably a little too critical. I see some of his points though.
I'm going to say I see a couple of his points. We even talked about the secondary characters, the other crew members don't get a lot of fleshing out. I don't know that I would call them vague shadows with single attributes that define them, but I'm not saying that that's like super duper far off. They really don't get that much. Some of them, especially Clubs, you barely get anything about Clubs until like maybe the very end where it's like, why are you the general, Clubs? He's like, where do you think I got this, like limp or whatever. So I get where you're coming from on that. I feel like the Lord Ruler is kind of fleshed out, but in a weird way, because we don't learn stuff about him in the current time. We learn stuff about Rashek, and we get this idea of the kind of person Rashek is. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's him. So we actually learn more about Rashek than we ever learn about like Clubs or Ham through Alendi's journal. So the Lord Ruler is actually one of the more fleshed out characters. It's just you have to connect those things in your mind after the reveal.
Yeah, and then also another thing I'll say is he He sounds like he's just not used to reading Brandon. Maybe this is his first book that he's read of Brandon's, but we've talked about it. That's the podcast is named after it. He seemed to have a lot of problems with the pacing of the book.
Oh yeah.
But then, and we did complain about the pacing, especially in the second book.
Yeah.
But we kind of knew going in, well, no, that's how the pacing of these books works. It's like you get all this dialogue, character stuff happens, things change, there's like twists, there's failures, and then everything starts moving faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
But I guess he doesn't like that pace in a book.
That's fair. And there's actually a lot of the reviews talk about the pacing. I think that's kind of what it is. It's like, this is Brandon style, and it's not going to be for everyone with the way the pacing works, especially at the end of the books. I feel like the thing about George R.R. Martin was like, I expected closer to this quality. For one thing, I think that and he says it in relation to like showing rather than telling. And I'm like, look, if you go back and read the first Game of Thrones book, because it's introducing this new universe, there is a lot of telling rather than showing in that book.
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially the first half of that book, not that much happens.
No,
it's not until like later when you start getting into a lot of stuff. And so this is the first
right.
book of this world also. And if you equate those, it's actually not. I mean, it's still George R. R. Martin's writing is definitely very different. And so I'm not going to say that they're equal or anything, but I feel like you're kind of drawing a false comparison there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because you're right. Until Eddard Stark gets to the Southern Kingdom, it's like there's really nothing much that can happen. Because
yeah, exactly.
The throne is in the south, so all of the king stuff coming up to the north to get him to come down to be the Hand. It's like, I mean, there's not much that's going on.
Okay, I'm going to go into the next one, and this is another short, fun one that I put on here just because I liked it. So Jeff on Goodreads said, it was when the thief and the mage pulled out a whiteboard and started drawing a flowchart of how to conquer the fantasy kingdom that I realized, wait, I'm just reading some sad bastard's D&D campaign. I'm not sure what purpose fiction serves, but I'm positive this is not it.
What? I guess he's saying Kelsier's the mage and Dox is the thief, and they're making a plan to overthrow the kingdom. Well, I mean, that's the thing they're trying to do. Really,
it's Kelsier with the whiteboard, and he's kind of the thief and the mage. So I don't know if he's.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't know if that was clear at that point to him, I guess.
Or maybe he's saying Vin. Maybe Vin is the thief because she's in the room when this is happening. So
yeah.
And they have been the two main.
But that she's also a mage, so I don't know what he's saying.
Yeah, but she hasn't really used much magic before then, so maybe I don't know. Anyway, it's just he's like some sad bastard's D&D campaign.
I've tried to think of it from that perspective now. It's like, is the DM playing as one of the characters? Is he Kelsier? Like, what's going on? Like, because Kelsier's the one with the plan. So
you're right. I don't know. Do you ever have people sit around? Is that something we do when we're like, okay, we have to go do this? Let's sit here and come up with a plan for how we're going to do it first.
So, and what you're talking about is our group, because of the particular friends that we have in our group. That doesn't happen because they're kind of like, okay, let's just go do this. Sometimes Matt Bjorn will try to make a plan, but he's playing his character so dumb that none of his plans are very good.
He plays him so dumb.
So I feel like plans never really do get made. And you're usually the one that's like, okay, well, why don't we just go do this? And then they're like, yeah, okay. But I did DM for a group where they would, like, every encounter, they would be like, okay, how can we talk our way out of this? Let's come up with a plan. You're going to go stand over there and I'm going to do this. And then blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's go. Like, people do that. It just depends on the play style. I actually like the way you guys do it more, because it leads to a lot more interesting reactions and back and forth. It also, makes the NPCs mad because you guys are doing dumb stuff, and they get mad and they start a fight. And, if you're just talking the whole time and you're not fighting, it's not really D&D, I feel like.
Well, no, it's especially good when the NPCs start talking shit and Poet's like, nope, stab them.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't take this from an NPC.
Yeah, so for this to be a D&D campaign, for the book itself to be a D&D campaign, I feel like it's pretty crummy, because it's like, it sounds like they don't do a very good job of saving the world, and one of their guys dies near the end, and then another one just like rolls a crit 20 to kill the bad guy. So it's like I don't really know that it works as a D&D campaign, but that was an interesting review.
It's funny because I've talked about before. I actually asked the people on the Discord, partly because I knew this was coming up, but also partly because it was, and I think we'll read some emails at the end of this also, just because I don't want to hold them for 4 weeks. but somebody had emailed suggesting like extra content sort of things that we could do. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, I mean, if we ever did like a Patreon, maybe these would be good ideas for extra content things. Because the only thing I'd ever come up with when thinking like what extra content could we make is like there's a Mistborn RPG game. So maybe I was like, well, maybe we could do like some Mistborn RPG sessions. That's the only thing. So this guy came up with a couple ideas that he sent, and then I asked in the Discord, I was like, if we did some sort of extra content, are these ideas interesting to you, or what kind of other things would you guys be interested in? And in partly the idea was that if the idea that I had for this, where we're doing 1-star reviews, if people weren't enjoying that, then maybe some of these ideas we could bring in. But the majority of people on Discord were kind of like, hey, I'll listen to whatever you guys do, which that's nice. Thanks.
That is nice, but input is also nice.
But anyway, that was just another short, fun one that I enjoyed. Here's another, not quite as long, but still more lengthy one from Laura, on Goodreads. Laura says, warning, this will be a very angry rant review. Honest to God, I will never understand how this book is so beloved by all. I have been so painfully bored since the very beginning. Hopefully it will eventually redeem itself. The entire first section of this book is all political dialogue that mostly doesn't even make much sense because the entire time Kelsier just hints at things without fully explaining them. Vin hardly speaks at all, so she basically doesn't even count as a character. Then, when we get to the 2 chapters based around the magic system, I seriously just wanted to scream. I was so bored. Honestly, I think I'm the only reader in the world that could not give a shit about how magic works scientifically. Oh, you can fly? Great. More power to you. Oh, you can summon a fireball with your hand? Awesome. You can shapeshift? Fantastic. I don't need to know the specifics behind it. It's bloody magic. It just is. Maybe you were born with it. Maybe a radioactive spider bit you. Maybe you were cursed. That's all I need to know. From page 187 to 189, I counted the word coin/coins used 24 freaking times, and they were used at least another 4 times the next couple of pages. I was getting so irrationally angry at the repetitive word usage that I was about ready to throw the book across the room. Like, okay, we've established metals are the reason people can use magic in this world. You spent 2 bloody chapters explaining that. You don't have to mention them every freaking time magic is used. Just get on with the damn story. I'm honestly just so disappointed with this book. I've had it sitting on my shelf for almost a year, and I've actually been dying to read it this whole time, but I was apprehensive knowing it was high fantasy. I love the fantasy genre, but typically high fantasy and I don't mix. I should have trusted my gut and not bought into the hype. It's just that I've heard so many people who normally hate high fantasy as well say they absolutely adored this book, so I figured maybe this would be the one to break the spell for me. Sadly, not the case.
So right off the bat, let me ask you, because I'm a dumb guy, I guess. I don't know. What is the difference between fantasy and high fantasy?
So high fantasy is generally fantasy that takes place in like a different world, like an entirely fantasy world. So if there's a different world being created, that's high fantasy. There's other words for other kinds of fantasy. Sometimes if something's on Earth as a contrast to high fantasy, they'll call it low fantasy. I know that's my favorite terminology for it. And something like the Dresden Files that takes place in the modern world that's urban fantasy.
That would make sense.
And so,
I guess. I mean, man, if she doesn't like high fantasy, she's throwing a lot of stuff out the window. She doesn't like Lord of the Rings. She doesn't like. I mean, there's some great fantasy stuff that's definitely not set on Earth.
Right.
But anyway, I think she does have a point with the usage of explaining the magic system. If that's not your thing, if you're not interested in understanding how it works, then yeah, it might be aggravating to you. And I think we all talked about in the first book when we were reading it, like, okay, it was good that they explained it in these chapters and they used it in the battle, so he said it several times, but that was probably enough. He probably doesn't need to keep doing that at this point because we're good. So I get where she's coming from that. I don't know why she's angry, but I guess because she there was a lot of hype built around the book. Just take the hype with a grain of salt. Whenever I hear something hyped up, I always think about it for a while, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go into this hyped up thing with lower expectations than what my friends are hyping it up to be, because undoubtedly I'm going to find some stuff wrong with it, and so I don't want to go in with high expectations, because then I know I'm just going to not like it. So that's why, especially when we started the series, I know you liked it a lot, but I was just like, I'm just going to go into this with a completely open mind, and I'll try to just see it for what it is. This reader sounds like she couldn't quite manage that. So she does have some points. I would say I would say that the characters are talking in the way, and they're talking, because I know she mentioned something about Kelsier and Vin not talking much at all. It's like there's a reason for that. I mean, it's character development.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, obviously all of these 1-star reviews are going to be a little too harsh or funny or ridiculous. So I'm kind of talking in circles here, but basically I don't agree with her. I agree, but I can see how some of the things she said have some merit for sure.
I feel like if you don't like the explanation of the magic systems, Brandon is just not the place to be, because that is like what he's known for, is having these magic systems that have solid rules and that are explained so you understand how they work and know what to expect out of them.
Right.
So it was just, Laura found herself in a very bad place, if that is her opinion on magic and fantasy. But the part that really gets to me is the coins thing, where she's like, it was used 24 times. And I was like, look, coins are what they use to move and fight when they're Mistborn. If you're reading another fantasy book and there's a sword fight going on, you will see the word sword like 100 times, because the swords are swinging. It's the same thing. This is their weapon. This is what they're using. I don't get why the word coin upset you that badly. But
no, I mean, you're completely right. And actually, you know, to your point, you're going to see coins more, because like you said, they don't just use it to fight. They use it to move around. So what are you going to say? They punched the air with their foot. They punched it with their other foot. They punched off of that with their foot. Like, you have to describe what's happening, so you're gonna have to use the word.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%. It's like they use the coins for fighting, for moving, for balancing. So you're gonna have to hear the word coin. Sorry, we heard the word spike a lot in some of the books as well. We heard the word horseshoe. You know, it's like it's gonna happen. They're using the stuff. You're gonna hear the word.
Also, I don't like saying that because Vin hardly speaks at the beginning or in a lot of this book, to be fair, until she starts coming out of her shell. That's part of her character development. But it's like she hardly speaks at all in the first of the book, so she's basically doesn't even count as character. You're in her mind so much, you know what she's thinking, and she is like this like person who has been taught not to like talk out to crew leaders and stuff. That's part of what we see her growth as she becomes more comfortable with these people. I don't see how like, no, I don't care how much she thinks, what's in her head. If she doesn't talk, she's not a character. It doesn't count. It's not, we're not watching a movie. If it was a movie, maybe you could argue that, but I don't like that.
Yeah, you're 100% right, because I think if she talked all the time, that would make the moment where she finally does speak out to Kelsier and be like, you guys act like you're ska, but you all live like nobles. Like, that would make that much less impactful.
Right.
If she just spouted her mouth off all the time. So, I think you're 100% right on that. I think she needs to really think about what she views as a character. It's like, if I don't use my voice, I'm not a character. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Because then, like, how could you be a character if you then a deaf person couldn't be a character.
Right.
Then a mute person couldn't be a character. Yeah. Spook couldn't have been a character because he didn't talk much. At least in the first book.
When he did talk, you had no idea what he was saying. So
exactly.
Doesn't even count.
Yeah, Wuzzing with the burn. You know, it's like, I don't know what he's saying.
Okay, another short, funny one that just kind of goes along with that, because I had to do these back to back. So Ola on Goodreads, OLA, not like HO, OLA, says, in this novel, there are 440 nods of the head, 299 smiles, 200 frowns, 152 shakes of the head, 166 glances, 120 sighs, 93 shrugs, 50 raised eyebrows, 31 pairs of rolled shoulders, and 5 uses of the word maladroit. That's the entire 1-star review.
I guess she doesn't like overusage of things. I have to ask, if you don't like overusage of words, are you just like an English teacher? I feel like that's what my English teacher in high school said. She's like, you can't use was that many times. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's how people speak. Like, if I want to describe somebody rolling their shoulders, why do I have to pick a different action or a different verb just so that you're appeased? That makes no sense. Nobody talks that way. Nobody reads that way. Nobody acts that way. Like, I'm not just going to throw in, like, he tapped his foot impatiently in just so that you can not see he glanced sideways from side to side nervously. Like, I'm not going to substitute one for the other just because you don't like the amount of times that I put that in. I never understood that.
With something like, I mean, just for since you use an example, with something like was, if like every sentence is he was this and she was that, and I can get how it sounds once you get a paragraph or two of that, it's like, oh, this is, it does sound off to me. But at the same time, I'm just like, if through the whole book there were 31 times some people were rolling their eyes, people roll their eyes. It could, that saying that communicates something. People smile. I'm sorry that there were almost 300 times where someone smiled, but that is a thing that people do. So I don't know.
Yeah. The absence of words here just says so much to me. It's just like this person is just like, I don't like how many times things were done over and over. It's like, okay, sorry. Do you want the person that's writing this fantasy book to be like a poet that has extensive vocabulary? I don't understand. Plus, I would say that it's also based on what kind of story you're writing. If you're writing a story about real people, they're going to act in normal ways. They're not going to do weird stuff or express themselves in a different way. And again, she's talking about the actions words more than the actual dialogue. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I've talked myself into a circle again. It's like she or he is just being a little too negative for no reason.
So just as a note, because Smile was the one that she mentions first and came up the most, I was like, let me take a look here. I went to The Name of the Wind, where Patrick Rothfuss is usually considered very good with words. Like his prose is one of the things that people love. It's like it's like poetry practically, the way he writes.
Yeah.
There's 400 occurrences of Smile in The Name of the Wind, which is a longer book than The Final Empire, to be fair, but still. So it's something that authors, people are going to smile to indicate that they're happy. That is what authors do. What are you going to say? It's like, he was happy. Then you have 300 happies. I don't.
Right. To your point from the last review, it's not a movie.
Yeah.
It's like he has to. You have to, with words, express what the character is looking like at this moment, how they're reacting. So yeah, you're gonna have to reuse words. That's just how it is.
Okay. Let's see. Let me pick another one out of here. Okay. Here's the very first one I found on Amazon. This one says, dull and unbelievable. More than 600 pages, ... in which almost nothing happens. Dozens and dozens of pages spent on various characters training our quote-unquote heroine in allomancy, while saying almost nothing about some truly interesting concepts in the book. Ash fell from the sky, inquisitors, etc. I really tried with this book. I really did. But when, after 500 pages, the main character returns from the showdown with the other Mistborn in tattered clothes and covered in blood, what does she get as a reaction from her comrades in arms? Undergarments is not appropriate clothing for a young lady. After that, I forever tossed this book in the no-no bin and erased Sanderson from my list of writers to follow.
I know we just read that review. I want to go back because there was a review that I forgot to mention. She talks about and there's too much political talk in the first book. Oh boy.
Oh yeah, the second. I was thinking the same thing.
Didn't move on to the second book.
Like the very first thing they said was the political talk, and I was like, did she read the wrong book? Is she reviewing the second book?
Well of Ascension, yeah. Oh man, yeah. If she hated the political talk in the first one, woof.
But the thing is, I don't feel like there's that much political talk in the first one.
I mean, not really. It's just hey, we need to overthrow the Lord Ruler, and the Inquisitors like hurt people and hunt people, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, there's political talk because the readers are strangers to this world. We have to know what's going on. We have to know how their political system works in order to understand why it's bad and why they need to overthrow it. But yeah, jumping back to this review that you just read. Actually, now I've forgotten everything about it.
Nothing happens in 600 pages.
Oh yeah.
And the undergarments are not appropriate clothing for a young lady.
Look, okay, your character just went through some shit. You gotta have some comic relief. That's all that was.
It was a joke, and it was a good one.
It was a good joke. It was funny that they kept bringing up that she just walks around in her underpants. That's funny.
And even the characters in the story are like, okay, yeah, what he just said was ridiculous, but this is just how he deals with stuff. Because it was like Doxson who was upset about that.
Yeah, he's just like, look, he's got to find something he can control, and you walking around in your underpants is something he can control, so don't do it.
Oh man, I don't feel like nothing happened in this book. Like that was their first complaint, is there's 600 pages and nothing happens. And I mean, maybe it's more of it may really be more of a character story. In what happens is Vin develops as a person, and that's kind of the main through line of this book. Even though there's this revolution in the background, there's not that much, like, until the end of the book, there's not that much revolution. There's not that much stuff actually changing in society and big things happening.
Right.
because that's what the book is building to. But before that, it's about Vin and how she becomes this new person and how she learns about this new world. And I like that. This character's story of her. So
he's building to something large on the horizon, but his stories are primarily about the people in the books, which if you don't like character development or hearing stories about people, I honestly don't know why you're reading books, because I don't want to just hear about events and not hear about how the people are affected by them. That doesn't really mean much to me.
Right.
So if they just told going back to Harry Potter, if Harry Potter was just like a boy goes to school, he learns that an evil wizard killed his parents, then he learns to do magic, and then he defeats the evil wizard. Like that's the story of Harry Potter, but what about all the good parts with the people in it? So I'm not sure what she's saying. I guess she wanted more to happen. Again, this reviewer probably has just a problem with the pacing, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
They're like, nothing
that's
happens,
what it comes down to.
and then I wonder if they even made it to the end, because they didn't mention that, and then at the end all this stuff happens, all too fast or anything. So
it sounds like this person says they quit after the undergarments are not appropriate clothing.
That's right. She's like, I threw the book away after.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
But you're right. I hadn't actually thought about it that way. But even in the Stormlight archive, which is his big epic where kingdoms rise and fall and stuff, it really is all about the people in the story, and it's very centered on personal things. And so it's not. And I like that you're telling a story that way. You're right. Harry Potter is the same thing. Harry Potter is all from Harry's perspective basically, and it's about him and not the huge the stuff that's happening.
Yeah,
which is why book 5 is
going on.
Yeah. Exactly, and we don't know what's going on because he doesn't know what's going on. But that's why book 5 is so infuriating, because he's being a little shit.
The whole time. Which, to be fair, that's probably the book where he knows the least about what's going on around him, and it is affecting him. So it's like, holy shit, somebody tell me what's going on. This is pissing me off. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm having to deal with all this shit vicariously because I don't know what's happening to me.
Well, he's also a teenage boy, so there's
true.
It makes sense that you would be a little shit for a while, but it's still annoying.
15's a tough age.
Oh goodness. Okay, let's see. Oh, this one's good because of the you'll see. This other one from Amazon says, an epic waste of time. I see the next 2 novels in my community college library. It helps that the premise on the front flap seems interesting, so I decided to check it out after a few days. That said, I find it nice to read somebody acknowledge the fact that if you mistreat your comrades, they will leave you. Granted, one of our quote heroes said that. However, this was the only sensible nugget of wisdom aside from Slazed speaking about religion or Ham trying to find a conversation. Speaking of Slazed, his name changes from time to time. That's because his name is not Slazed. I don't think his name in the book is
definitely not Slazed.
Anyway,
Slazed. It sounds like a rock and roll guitarist.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
And
like
welcome
Slash.
to the stage, Slazed. Yeah, no, that's it's not his name.
Sorry, I had to pause because it's the Slazed part that makes me laugh.
Right. He's probably just confused, I guess, because of the Sazed thing.
It is hard to say when you first see it. Yeah.
He's got a nickname. That's all it is. Calm down.
In addition, the intricacies of metal burning sounds interesting. In fact, it stays that way for a while and leads to interesting fight and chase scenes. On the other hand, there are several flaws. First off, for someone who's supposed to be insane, Keelseer sure does admit that a lot. Yeah, it should go without saying that unhinged people don't do that. Then this is coming from someone who's seen a stranger start squeezing her finger, period. So his friend had to explain that man thought her knew her. Also, glares and flat stares. Yeah, I don't understand any of that sentence. Or
is this guy crazy? Is that what he's trying to say?
I don't know, maybe. But it's Kelsier does admit that he's crazy, and I think that you're supposed to think that he's not crazy based on I don't know. Kelsier's just he's a weird dude. So it's a weird complaint to me. Anyway, to continue, I don't want to dissect this piece by piece, but also glares and flat stares don't even begin to look the same. That's unless you have some reason for being able to discern facial expressions. On the other note, I have to mention Vin because she plays such an integral part. I don't mind her until she interrupts Ellen's reading. What makes it worse is her quote-unquote reasoning behind it. It doesn't help that she remains aggravating on this subject. It gets to the point she even threatens to end her relationship with Ellen over that. When she fought to save him, I didn't buy their love. Of course, there's also claiming Reen loved her. Him raising her doesn't change the fact that almost every time he's mentioned, he's either had to encourage trust that can be justified, though, or abusing her. I guess learning he lied to protect her is supposed to absolve that. While on this subject, I need to mention the Dark Lord. I don't dislike him for his past deeds. I don't even dislike him for being instrumental for a mentor cliche. I guess that's killing off Kelsier. It's because he starts out with real reason to lament. He even makes legitimate points. I even started empathizing with him until the last few chapters. One last thing about the characters. I guess since it's a fantasy story, it's okay to spend 5 seconds naming everyone. And don't get me started on Vin. However, there's an upside to this. Ellen turns out to be an honest man. He even expresses wanting to change how the Empire rules. I felt happy until I started considering he could have just been posturing. That was until the tail end of the novel. That said, this begs the question, does this turn the entire genre on its head? It starts off this way because a few characters question the main goal. However, it soon turns into a typical fantasy novel. In fact, if you take out the mention of Allomancy and Feruchemy, you won't run the risk of shortening it. Or no, you run the risk of shortening it. That's the review, and I don't understand it, which is why I read it. I was like, maybe it makes sense to someone else.
Well, I heard a few points in there. So, yeah, I'm a little confused. I can't tell. I mean, it's 1 star, so I guess he didn't like it. But there were parts where I'm like, sounds like he likes it.
Yeah.
Sounds like he doesn't like it. So let's talk about the stuff that I kind of feel like I understood. Then, he seems to have a problem with her name.
Her name, yeah, I guess.
I don't know why. It's a name. Then the weirdest thing that he seemed to not like was that she interrupted him while he was reading.
Yes, exactly.
At a party? It's like, bro, if you're at a party, like, they kind of make fun of that he's a dick at the party and just wants to read, like, and he doesn't want to be a part of the party, but he has to be there. That's kind of the point of him reading at the party, is to look like he doesn't want to be there. So for her to kind of call that out, I feel like that's, normal, which leads me to believe that maybe this reviewer is a guy who goes to parties and just sits in the corner and reads and doesn't want anyone to bother him, which then I'm like, okay, well then why are you going to the party, bro? So it was a little strange that he's upset about that. I'm trying to think if there was anything else in there that I kind of understood. Is there anything that sticks out to you that you understood?
No, I think you picked out the things like the Vin name. It's like, I guess it's okay to spend 5 seconds naming everybody. Don't get me started on Vin. And so I was like, so he hates Vin. Did he dislike everyone's names, or she? I didn't have a name on this one. I'm gonna call this person Slazed. So I don't know if Slazed didn't like everyone's names or just Vin's. I think maybe the naming conventions and like stuff like Ham is a pretty like, oh, come on, really, that's a name. It's short for Hammond in the end, which makes sense. But I think it, like we talked about recently, is like a reaction to what he did in Elantris, where the names were so ridiculous.
Yeah. Hrathen, Raoden, Sereni.
Yeah.
Keen?
No, it's Kai-Ein.
Kai-Ein, yeah. Stupid. I'm calling him Keen. Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, okay, so you don't like the names. I guess he wanted like Hrathen, or he wanted some weird shit from Elantris. Right. Hey man, it exists. Go read it.
It's there.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know why this guy gave it 1 star. It sounds like maybe English also isn't this guy's first language. So maybe we cut him some slack. But so of all the 1-star reviews that we've read, which one was your favorite?
I like the one where the person just lists out all the words and how many times they were said. That one's fun.
That one's pretty good. I think honestly maybe the first one was my favorite, where she's like, didn't even finish the first chapter. Couldn't even finish the first chapter. It's just like, what? Like, you hear the word luck and you're like, I'm out. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Oh yeah, because they didn't finish the first chapter, but the story was trite and the magic was ridiculous, right, or whatever.
Yeah, even though you have no idea how it works at that point, you wouldn't have any
idea what the story is about.
What even chapter do we get like a good explanation of Allomancy? When does that chapter come?
Oh, that is okay. So he recruits Vin,
mm-hmm.
and then after they have their first big meeting, he takes her out that night and starts explaining how Allomancy works. So that is. Let's see, I can find that 1 second. The Ministry Clubs. There's Marsh showing up at the meeting and getting upset at Kelsier. Okay, here we go. So it was chapter 7.
Right. So she was like, nah, I'm done after but like not even all the way through chapter 1.
Yeah.
And literally, like, they don't even saying that the story was trite and the magic was dumb. You don't even get an explanation of any of the magic until 6 chapters later.
Yeah.
I just like the hubris of, like, I read halfway through this first chapter. It sucks. That'd be like me sitting through, the first 5 minutes of a movie and being like, this sucks, I'm out. Which I don't know, I could make a determination. Maybe on some movies you could.
On some movies, probably. Yeah. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention because we didn't necessarily read any reviews in them, but there were some recurring themes in the reviews. One of them was people complaining that the twist at the end was so easy to see coming that they saw it from like halfway through the book. And it was super obvious. And I'm like, we were all examining that book real closely, and there was a theory, maybe
about halfway through. Yeah.
But I don't think, unless we're all just really dumb, that it is as obvious as a lot of these people make it out to be.
I also don't think that my enjoyment of the book was lessened by the fact that we figured that out.
No.
And also, like, hindsight's 20/20, right? It's like, if you read a book, found out the twist, you're like, I knew that.
It's just like people who went to see The Sixth Sense and they're like, oh, I knew immediately what was going on. I'm like, sure you did.
It was a ghost the whole time. I mean, come on.
And another common complaint is something we've even talked about, that people feel like his prose is not as interesting or well written as like Rothfuss. Rothfuss is called out a lot, him and Martin, as being like.
Let me tell you something, okay? Lisa Sanderson finishes his series. All right.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah. Oh, did I tell you I went to like a meeting and we were doing like a get to know you thing, and I think, and so we had to ask, we were asked like random questions, and one of the questions that a girl asked, she read it out loud and then she tries to answer it. I think it was like, if you could talk to one person, alive or dead, who would it be? And she'd like, I'd talk to, one of my favorite authors to find out when their series is going to end. And I was like, if it's Patrick Rothfuss, the answer is never. And it totally was. It totally was Patrick Rothfuss. And I was like, that's funny.
I mean, you can talk to him and he won't tell you. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because he doesn't know either. But
no.
I thought you were going to be like, somebody asked about like books that I read a topic on Reddit the other day that was like, if someone asked you in a job interview, like, what's a book that you've read recently, what would not be a book to say? And so there were some funny stuff in there. Someone's like, Dianetics, don't say that you read that recently.
Oh, jeez. Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf. And somebody responds like, I have a copy of Dianetics and one of Mein Kampf like in my guest bathroom just to mess with people.
Oh, that's kind of fucked up.
But apparently there's like books out there that are like dinosaur erotica and stuff like that. So some weird shit.
Oh God. Oh, I thought they were gonna like have an interesting discussion about how it's like, don't say Ayn Rand, that's lame. Don't say Catcher in the Rye, that's sociopathic. Like, stuff like that, not dinosaur erotica.
There were some interesting like discussions. Like somebody was like, Art of War is a good one, and someone's like, no, don't say that. Well, and someone's like, if you haven't actually read it, don't say that, because a lot of people have read it, and if they ask you for specifics, you can't BS your way through that. And then someone else talked about how they did say that in an interview, and the interviewer was actually really impressed because they did know all about Art of War, and they had some idea like, oh, I can use this in the business world this way. And so later on, like the interview was going really good because this guy's impressed. And then they ask him a question, like, how would Sun Tzu handle this situation? And the guy recounts this story from the Art of War where it's like, the king's like, well, could you turn like women into an army? And he's like, yeah, here, I will give you an example. And so he's like, he gets this 100 of the king's concubines and lines them all up and puts 2 of the favorites are nominated to be like in charge of the 2 divisions of concubines. And so he's like, here, I'm going to let me explain. When I say turn right, you're to order everyone to turn right or whatever. And then everyone, you're supposed to turn like this and face this way. And so he gives basic explanation, and then he gets up there and he's like, okay, so turn right. And all the girls break out giggling. And so he's like, okay, hold on, let me explain again. Maybe I didn't explain well enough. Explains again, tries again. All the girls just fall down giggling. So he says, if there's a mistake once, it may be that the instruction is not clear, and you clarify the instruction. If you know the instruction is clear and mistakes continue to happen, it is the fault of leadership. And so he has the 2 women who were put in charge of these 2 groups executed. and puts 2 other women in charge, and it's like, now turn right, and all of a sudden all the women turn right and everything works perfectly. And so he's like,
oh no,
you have to change the leadership approach or make sure that leadership is on the right page or whatever. So he's trying to use this as an example of, like, in his interview, of leaders taking responsibility and having to change something in themselves if things are going wrong. But he's just talking about women being beheaded, and apparently that doesn't go over well in an interview necessarily.
Mm-hmm. No, that doesn't go over well.
So yeah, fun stuff in that Reddit topic.
Oh
okay.
boy.
I'm gonna go ahead and do these the emails. We have 4 emails. Let's hit those. Obviously, we're not going to have predicaments this time. We're not going to talk about which chapters we're reading next time. I think for the next time, we're going to do Well of Ascension 1-star reviews, because people won't have reacted to this one yet. So after that, we might change if people don't enjoy this a whole lot. So we'll see. Anyway, so emails. Caden Althor, which is like the main character's Rand Althor from Wheel of Time. We've heard from this guy before, but I was a Wheel of Time fan. He says, finally, Elantris. And he says, I wrote this after the first episode of the book came out. Hi again. So first, I have some opinions about the pronunciation of names. Am I the only one who doesn't care? Books are not an audio medium. I suppose it's supposed to be what you make up in your mind. All this ruckus started after we started listening to audiobooks. When I read a book, I usually just skim over the names. All I remember is the main guy, is the friend, the side guy, baddie, girlfriend, etc. Same goes for places, but maybe that's just me. Next, I was eating outside in a shop while I listened to this episode, and when you guys made a comment about the slime being their excrement, I gagged so hard that I had to run out of the restaurant, and now I can't get it out of my head. So thanks for that. All kidding aside, great episode. Keep up the good work. I would like to make a suggestion where, if you guys read other books, make like a bonus episode where the one who read it tries to convince others to read it. Would be interesting to hear. And then he says, P.S. How's the Wheel of Time going? Maybe make a bonus episode of your thoughts on that. Just saying, it gets tedious covering the same series for such a long time. Still a fan, Caden Althor. So this is the guy I was talking about who had a couple ideas for like bonus content we could do. Oh, okay. And I will say, well, in answer to your question, I am done with as I said, with the 14 main books of the Wheel of Time. I decided to take a break before reading the prequel because I think I burned out on it going so fast through it. And I thought it was okay. I had some issues, but I didn't dislike it. I think that part of it is what we were talking about earlier, where this has been hyped up for a really long time, and I don't think it lives up to the hype, but that doesn't mean that it's not good. You know, it's just, it's not the greatest thing to ever happen to fantasy literature or whatever, right? So
yeah,
but
that was like the hype around Avatar, the movie. I just like, I couldn't understand it.
I thought you were gonna say The Last Airbender. I'm like, The Last Airbender is awesome.
Great. No,
you be quiet.
I'm talking about the movie Avatar, James Cameron. Like, I did not understand the hype around it.
No,
saw the movie, I was like, this is not that good.
No, it's not that good.
But anyway, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
So much hype that it needs its own world at Disney and 12 more movies or whatever he's gonna make, and I'm just like, really? But anyway, so I like the idea of bonus content. That is the kind of thing that I think would do if like I said, if I started a Patreon for the show, then we would need to make some sort of stuff so to do bonus content for that. It wouldn't be fair asking people for pay and not give them anything extra. That's the kind of thing that I will keep in mind for that. I don't, except for circumstances like this where we were forced to take a break more or less because we don't want to do the next 4 episodes with just the 2 of us still reading through Elantris. I set up the show.
Yeah, and I don't think you guys want us to do that either.
I honestly, if I think based on emails and things that I've heard from people that Jamie may be the favorite. So
totally, she's obviously the favorite. She's the best.
So they don't want us doing 4 episodes in a row without Jamie, probably.
No.
But anyway, I set up the show in the first place with 4 people so that if one of us just had to be gone, we could do a show with 3 people. We could even do an episode with 2 people if we needed to, if there was just no way around it and we didn't want to skip. But I don't want to do 4 episodes of the book with just 2 people in a row. That seems a little much. So when we're forced to do something else, then that's when I start thinking about, well, what kind of bonus content, not our normal thing, would we do? But for the most part, with our weekly releases, I don't want to move away from the purpose of the show if we can avoid it.
100%. What was the first thing he mentioned in the email?
The pronunciation of people's names.
Yeah, so I'd like to get inside your brain, man, because I don't understand how you don't want to know how to say the name. I guess for me, I when I'm alone, I actually will sometimes read to myself aloud, but even if I don't, I want to know how to say the name, or at least to an extent that it makes sense, because if I don't read the person's name, then I'm probably not going to remember who that person is. So for me, I gotta at least have a basic knowledge of how to pronounce it.
Well, and it's interesting because Caden said that, like, they don't even care about the names really. They're just like, this person is protagonist, this person is girlfriend, and I'll just remember them that way.
Yeah.
And so maybe that works, but I couldn't do that.
No. Could you imagine if we were doing the podcast and we were like, oh yeah, so girlfriend shows up and then she talks to him, and then she, girlfriend's not all that interesting, and then it turns out later he becomes king, and then gets with a lot of other women, so girlfriend probably is kind of sad about that. Like that would be really hard to follow, I feel like. So for our purposes, since we are an audio podcast, we definitely need to know at least an idea of how we're going to say the names.
I mean, I don't know that girlfriend is much worse than like Tay and Say Say.
Tay and Say Say. It was Ray and Say Say. Come on, Ray.
Oh, it was Ray and Say Say. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I was joking. I'm not really gonna call them that.
Tay is Taylor Swift. Is it?
No, maybe... I don't know.
Anyway.
How would I know?
So the next email is from Andre, and Andre says, "Hello, Sanderlanche crew. It's Andre again. I just finished episode 40 and was pretty sad to find out that Joe didn't like the end of the second book. It's my favorite Cosmere book so far, and I couldn't forget. If I could forget one book that I've read and read it again, not knowing what's going to happen, it would be Well of Ascension. I know you guys are far ahead, but I'll catch up soon. I hope you all like the end of Hero of Ages. But while I was listening, I thought of one question that I wanted to ask, especially to Joe. I already heard you guys mention make some references to the Kingkiller Chronicles, so I assume you've read it. By the end of both books are even more vague to me than the end of the Final Empire and the Well of Ascension. Do you like the Kingkiller endings better? And if yes, why so?"
So, putting aside our frustration with the fact that we may never get the conclusion of said chronicles. First of all, let me stop there. Very interesting to me that Well of Ascension's your favorite. I'd be interested to know why
it sounds like the twist at the end where it's like you find out that like the whole thing has been a lie and that the text has been being changed and stuff, because he's like, if I could forget what was going to happen on one book and read it again not knowing, it would be that one because of the like epic.
Okay.
That.
I mean, that is cool. That's one of the twists I think in that series that none of us really saw coming. Nope. I don't think any of us really figured that out or got even close to figuring out that the information that we were being given was wrong. So yeah, that is a cool part of that book. I will say that. So for me, I haven't read them in a while because I knew the third book was kind of nowhere on the horizon. So I have not read them probably in a few years. What I will say is when I know something is meant to be a series, then vague endings, that's not as big of a deal for me. But I will say that each of the endings to the books had kind of a let's see what happens type of thing. Like, I'm going to start school next year. And I think for me, it's kind of like the Harry Potter thing, right? It's like each of the Harry Potter books has an ending. There's a lot of stuff left unanswered, but he's going to go back to school next year and stuff's going to happen and we're going to figure it out. With especially with Well of Ascension, at the end it's like I don't no idea what's going to happen now. None.
Yeah.
And it's like you could say that about a lot of books, I guess, but also Kingkiller Chronicles was one that I was recommended by Data, so I like Kvothe more than Vin. He's more interesting to me. There's a lot of, because at the outset of the book, what's happened. You don't know exactly what's happened, but for Kvothe, his story is about vengeance, at least at the outset.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's got a goal. His goal is to find the people who killed his parents and destroy them. Become powerful enough to do that. And then at some point he kills the king.
Yeah.
Because that's, it's called the Kingkiller Chronicles.
He kills a king, some king somewhere.
He kills a king, some king somewhere. Then that he owns a tavern, that he's still alive, and that things are kind of starting to happen again. But there's a little mystery behind that as to exactly what is happening. So I would say that there's a very specific goal in the Kingkiller Chronicles, something we're working towards the entire time. Whereas at the end of the first Final Empire, you kill the Lord Ruler, so then it's kind of like, well, we're going to rebuild this, we're going to build this new world, and you're kind of left like, okay, well, how are they going to do that? And then the same thing in the second book, it's like they let Ruin escape. It's like, oh no, now this power has escaped, like, what are we going to do? There's not like There's not like an overarching goal. And that's not to say that that's bad that they don't have an overarching goal. I think that's why I personally didn't like it. Because no matter what happens in the Kingkiller Chronicles, when he's telling the story, you know what he wants. He wants to kill the people that killed his family.
I think for me, where the Kingkiller Chronicle gets more forgiveness is you go into it knowing that he's like, this is a story that's going to take me 3 days to tell. And at the end of each book, he's like, okay, well, that's a decent enough stopping place for now. We'll continue the story tomorrow.
Right.
And so it's not, you're told from the beginning that we're not going to wrap this up nicely at the end of this book because it's going to take 3 days to tell this story.
Yeah.
You will get a wrap up at the end of the entire story. That's how the story works. Also, it's kind of, it's very different from the Final Empire in that, like, the first book especially, well, no, I'm not going to say especially, both books in the Kingkiller, they're, even though, like you say, he has this overarching goal, it's not something that he's, like, committed to constantly. The story is really like a series of smaller stories. It's like a bunch of short stories of his life. He went out and he did this for a while, and then he did this for a while. And so each little section kind of wraps up, like his adventure with the dragon in wherever wraps up, his time on the streets in Tarbean wraps up. And so you get like a lot of little resolutions along the way.
Little closures. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, and since it's almost like reading a series of short stories, it's like, okay, well, I'm okay. I'm not feeling like completely adrift because we've come to endings 5 other times in this book. So this is just another ending. I'm gonna have to wait till the next book after this.
Yeah. Also, another thing for me was because he's telling a story about his life, like you said, we know that it's not going to wrap up, but also the world just seems a lot grander. I almost feel like Scadrial at a certain point in the series, it felt too small. It felt like,
no, I see what you mean.
And because the world was ending, it almost felt like there's not enough space here for our characters to like live and survive and be and exist and do. Like they're stuck in Luthadel. They're stuck in the wilderness. Like they're always stuck somewhere. And there's never like a point at the book until the very, very end of the series that you're like, oh, these people have hope now. And I mean, there were certain instances like when they kill the Lord Ruler and stuff, but yeah, another thing, like Dana mentioned, it's like I do love like each of the little portions of the story that we hear. And I even like that there's one portion of the story where he's like, I'm not going to tell that part. And the chronicler, the scroll guy is like, what do you mean? That's like one of the most famous stories about you, how you did this and this and this. He's like, I don't want to tell that story. It's not important.
He's like, no, yeah, that's boring.
Yeah.
You don't even want to hear that, actually.
Yeah, it's the worst part of my life. It's terrible. And then what's the name of the people that Tempe belongs to that he goes and hangs out with?
The Adem.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite part of both books, was when he goes there and learns how to do stuff.
But I mean, you're right that the Kingkiller world feels very big. There's lots of countries and stuff that we just hear about, and we hear lots of details about. That part of the thing about Scadrial is that the Final Empire is like one country. Even after it kind of breaks apart, it's one land with not all that many cities in it of any size. So it really is kind of small, even in comparison to what we found out just in the first two sections of Elantris we've read, where it almost feels bigger because you've got this country that we're in with this city, and then we've got the big empire over here, and we've got this other country across the water. And if you look at the map beyond that, there's like on one map, in like if you go past Teod, it's like Rose Barbarians ? So it feels bigger, even though we haven't read into it, and it's only one book compared to 3. The world kind of feels bigger.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm not saying Kingkiller Chronicles is better than the than the Cosmere books, or the Final Empire series, Mistborn's Era 1 series. I'm not saying it's better because honestly, I like them for different reasons. I would rate, based on the first 2 books, I would rate them higher, but that's personal preference, completely personal preference. And if the series ever ended in a satisfying way, or even if it ended and it was dissatisfying, it might get a lower score. I don't know.
Right.
But who knows if that'll happen. So
Andre also says, I was really happy when I saw that you guys posted the picture I sent in the last email on Instagram. So he's the one that sent us the Sanderlanche podcast spelled out in the like steel alphabet thing. So
yeah, that was cool.
I love hearing, and you can say that I'm watching it just to annoy Joe, your podcast. It makes my day way better. Greetings from Brazil, buzzing to the time of next. So thank you, Andre.
Hey, Brazil won their first medal in gymnastics ever. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yep.
The third email is, you know what? Peter, I'm going to save this one because we're going to save that till we have people back together. Because
more people back.
It's a short and interesting question, and I'm curious to hear what everyone has to say about that one. So I don't want to save many emails for that long, but that one I'm going to go ahead and hold on to since it's so short. Michael says, "Hey, Sanderlanche crew, Michael from Seattle here. I'm so excited you're broadening your Cosmere awareness with Elantris, which I think most people don't give the credit it deserves. While the magic system doesn't hit you in the face as quickly as it in Mistborn, I was wondering if any of you had some early guesses about how Elantrian magic could fuel volcanoes like Adium in Mistborn."
I don't know that it would do the same thing. That's another question maybe we should save for everybody, but I'll go ahead and try and answer it. So am I supposed to guess how it could work to fuel a volcano?
Yeah, I think this at this moment, since all we've seen is like, oh, you write a thing in the air and this is the magic. I think that it would be really hard at this point to make any guesses as to that.
I mean, based on what we have seen so far, I would say that particular type of magic system may be based on runes. Like, I don't know, writing stuff. That makes sense to me.
Okay. So if you write volcano, a volcano pops up.
Yeah, or if you write like fire rune, or like you mix an earth and fire rune, maybe that like does something, you know? I don't know. That would be my best guess, because, you know, if you got to write stuff, that makes me think of runes.
Michael also puts a question here. He's like, I don't know if you can share this with them, but are you going to tell them about this particular information that is hard to come across outside of Chris's essays or the Wikipedia? So after we read Chris's essay on the cell system, Michael, that may be something I bring up, depending on whether they're making any connections on their own.
Ooh, the cell system.
Oh yeah, I don't know if we knew that yet. I'm sorry. The planet Elantris is on is called Cell, S-E-L.
Oh no, we definitely did not. Makes me think of Cell from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, same sound. Y'all's podcast is a great way to start the week, and I can't wait to hear what you think of Elantris. Wuzzing to the time of next, from Michael. So thank you, Michael. I'm sorry, everyone, that we're taking a little break from Elantris, but, you know, can't. There's babies, and babies change life. I know better than anyone, having had two at the same time. The things change very drastically after that, so it didn't feel fair to try to. Honestly, I feel like a month isn't very long to give them to try to settle into stuff. But that is sure. That's what we settled on now. We'll evaluate after that where everything sits. Anyway, so thank you, people who send in emails. Obviously, for the next couple of weeks, we will not have Dak and Jamie here to help answer emails. So if you have some questions you want to address to them specifically, you might save them for a bit. But if you do want to send us some emails, the address is thesanderlanche@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all those sorts of places. If you want to talk to us, we are there, or I am there at least. I'm in charge of all the social media presence, since we don't want anybody accidentally getting spoiled. Music by Miracle of Sound, and I'm not even sure as we record this which one this is going to be. I want to use a song that for these special episodes that I really enjoy personally, but that I don't think will fit with any of the books that we'll be doing later. So give me a chance to get like some great song in there that wouldn't otherwise get onto the show. So I guess we'll find out. You guys will already know by this time because you'll have heard it in the intro. What song that is, I don't know yet. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. If you have ideas for other stuff that you'd like us to do while Jamie and Dak are out, feel free to throw them out there, email or Instagram, Facebook, whatever, wherever you want to send us your suggestions, or on the Discord. I'm on the Discord a lot, talking to people, getting ideas. Other than that, please stick with us. Yeah. When we eventually do come back, we'll be reading the next 3 chapters of Elantris when we come back to the regular schedule, but that's a little ways off at this point. So, wuzzing to the time of next. Colo?
Never be better than